Hello, this is Darth Blint. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, my Discord is linked down below. Now, let's get into it. There are many types of lightsabers that we see within the Legends material as well as canon. Should Legends material be referenced, that's a whole nother video within itself. But for this, we're going to say yes. And you've got everything from a lightsaber staff to a pike to a one-handed saber to two-handed to one with cross guards to everything. If you think of a fighting weapon, there's probably a lightsaber version of it somewhere in Legends or canon material. They even have lightsaber whips that are made using little shards of kyber crystals, and you use your force to whip the whip so you don't hit yourself. Now, when it comes to lightsaber duels, their lightsaber techniques work best for different types of lightsaber weapons. But personally, I think the best lightsaber weapon a Jedi slash Sith could use is a curved hilt. And I will explain why now. So, a staff, if we're going to start by looking at a staff, because that seems to be the iconic weapon that everybody wants when it comes to using a lightsaber, they want a lightsaber staff. When you are battling someone with a lightsaber staff, the easiest way to beat them is to make them think that you have an advantage over them. If you've read the Darth Bane trilogy, the first book actually, Darth Bane's Saber instructor used a staff, and that was the information given to Bane is you think I have an advantage because you think I have an advantage. There is no advantage with a staff whatsoever. The reason being is because if you know where one side of the staff is, you automatically know where the other side is. You don't need to keep up with the whole thing. Pick one side and go with it. Not to mention, you're very limited on movements when you're using a lightsaber staff. You have to keep your hands within the center of the staff. You have to keep your strikes, your slashes. You can only do slashes. You can't do thrusts. You can't do your attacks are completely limited, and not to mention that they're usually bowed outwards, and they come in from the side always, which means they're very easy to parry. So as much as everybody loves the lightsaber staff, it's honestly only effective if your opponent thinks it is. If they know what they're doing, it's not going to do anything to help you. It's actually going to harm you because it destroys your reach. It destroys your ability to, to strike from specific angles. And yeah, your hands are just an open target. So then we get to let's go to the whip. The whip is all offense, no defense. If you're going in with a whip, you're going in for the insta kill. You cannot afford to miss on your first strike. And if you do miss on your first strike, you better have the force abilities to jump the heck out of there because you can't parry with a whip. It's honestly, I would never use one. I couldn't see a situation where a whip would be better. I mean, honestly, the only reason I would like Jedi or Sith that use whips, I see them specifically as having or not believing in themselves when it comes to the ability to have hand-to-hand or weapon-to-weapon combat. So they want to try to distance themselves a little bit and strike you from a distance because they are afraid to do close combat. And so that's a big downfall with that. And then you've got pikes. Pikes are good. The ones that we're going to be talking about here are the yellow ones, specifically from, like, if you ever seen Clone Wars. Those are mostly for defense purposes only, in order to basically hold off enemies. I mean, you can turn one side off, and then it just becomes a two-handed saber. And in that aspect, great. But using it as it is intended as a pike, it just doesn't give. It doesn't. It's not feasible in my opinion. And also, leave your opinions down below what you think about these different lightsaber weapons. And then you've got what do they call it? Drakai, two one-handed sabers. And I would like to go. I would like to. I oftentimes think about Dooku when I think about two-handed sabers. Dooku in the novels that I believe they're still canon. I'm like 99% sure they are, but don't quote me. He believes that a Jedi or Sith that requires two weapons are unsure of their skills to get it done with one, because a master with one will always get it done. If you feel like you need two, then you're not fighting with honor. And Dooku is a man of honor. He's a man that fights with honor. He chooses a single saber because he wants that combat. You know, that's why his fighting style. Anyways, so does two sabers give you an advantage? That's what we're getting down to here. And the answer is probably yes. I mean, two sabers can give you an advantage if you are trained properly. There's no specific downside to using two sabers. Now, unlike a staff where it limits your strikes, you are limited as well with two sabers out in front of you. You know, depending on how your sabers are aligned or how one is striking, it limits the way you can strike with your secondary saber. Personally, I would use one for offense and one for defense. You know, one to parry, one to strike. But that's there's a better weapon though. There's a better lightsaber style, or lightsaber period, I should say. And then you get down to a single lightsaber. This is what all Jedi and Sith start out with, 99% of the time. You learn your one saber, and most of them will stay with just that because why? The efficiency is there. You know what you need to know, you're efficient with it, you can block blasters, you can fight, and most people back in the prequels, most Jedi, you know, you see how they're doing those fancy spins and stuff. That's like form, what is it, 5 and 6, specifically made to go against opponents who use primarily blasters. At that point, the Jedi were so used to only fighting people with blasters that they were so ill prepared when it came to the Sith. But so a single lightsaber can be just as effective as someone wielding two. It really comes down to technique and skill level, to know who's going to win out of there. Now, if you take someone who's untrained and you give them a single saber and take someone else who's untrained and give them two, that doesn't mean that the person with two is automatically going to win. They can strike themselves, and actually they're more likely to hurt themselves than they are to hurt their opponent. And all you have to do is get them to stop thinking, step a certain way, and they're going to cut their own arm with their other weapon. So theoretically, both of those I would say are tied when it comes to efficiency, but there's one that is supreme above all, in my opinion, and that is a curved lightsaber hilt. Darth Bane used one in his trilogy novels. Dooku, famously uses one, and they use one for the exact same reason. And Dooku, I think, is a prime example of what Bane wanted the line to become, believe it or not, because he actually kept the same. He had similar values, and he had similar. They were both men of honor. and of power. And I think that Dooku and Bane would have gotten along very well. And so if you look at a curved lightsaber hilt, that gives you the that gives you so much advantage on any of the other styles that it alone is supreme. For example, if you're holding it on the curve and you're striking downward, all you have to do is flick your wrist and the attack goes from this to this in a split second. So you go whoosh or whoosh. All it takes is a flick of the wrist and your attack has completely changed its trajectory, and it has completely changed the degrees in which you're going to strike your opponent. And this is why Jedi feared going against opponents with a curved hilt, because they in the prequels they really didn't have training for it, and they knew they were outclassed when they saw an opponent with a curved hilt. And so personally, curved hilts are the best when it comes to quick and quick, and you can finish the combat very efficiently and very fast, because whenever you go to strike your opponent, like I said, they can block up here because all your movements say you're going to strike this way, but just a simple curve of the wrist and you can be striking the complete opposite in a fraction of a second, and they cannot, unless you can see the future with the Force. You're going to get hit. And it is perfect. It is the perfect offensive and weapon, as well as it works perfectly for defense. When it comes to, it works better than a regular lightsaber when it comes to defense, because you're blocking. You think you're going to block up here because the opponent is striking up, but let's say somehow they change the trajectory of their saber. Well, guess what? All you need to do is flick your wrist. That is it. Just go like this to this, and you've just went a 90-degree angle to block a lightsaber. You don't have to worry about doing this or this or this. And you just blocked from a whole new angle. So it not only increases your offense, but it increases your speed of your defense. And the only downside I could see potentially is if you have someone with weak wrists who is blocking like that, because the power from those blocks come from your wrists. And if your opponent hits hard enough, it could damage your wrists. But theoretically, if you are using a curved hilt, you've been trained to do so. But let's go with the same example I did before. You take two brand new, let's say Force users. They're not Jedi or Sith yet. You give one a straight hilted lightsaber and one a curved. Who's going to win? Honestly, it's probably going to be close. Either side could win. The guy with the curved, or girl, doesn't realize the benefit of having that weapon. So it's probably going to fight much like their opponent. It all comes down to technique. But technique and training with a curved hilt makes you potentially the best lightsaber duelist. So if I was in the Star Wars universe, that's probably what I would go with learning, personally. So tell me down below, what did I leave out? There are some lightsabers in Legends that I love. There's actually a lightsaber that can bring people back to life and heal people, believe it or not. So yeah, there's a ton of different types of lightsabers. I just went through some common lightsaber styles that people see. I could say, like the dark saber, but that's really just, that's not much different. That's not different enough to be its own, thing. But I will say that if they bring back Bane in Disney Plus, they have made drawings of a brand new weapon that they're going to give him. They're going to take away his curved hilt, and that upsets me, because that's iconic, and that I love his. It fits his personality so well, and he should keep his curved hilt. Please, Disney, don't give him that stupid trident with black blades that you guys were showing off. Now, the trident does look cool, but Bane doesn't need a trident. He needs his curved lightsaber, okay? Keep him with that for any future Bane content. This has been Darth Blint. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me what your favorite type of saber is down below. And my Discord is in the description down below. Go ahead and join it. We can talk about sabers. We can talk about Star Wars. We can talk about anything nerdy. Alright, I'll see you there. This has been Darth Blint, and may your chains be broken.